Bunker Hill Community College is inspiring dreams through academic excellence, community engagement, and workforce partnerships. Learn more at bhcc.edu.
Right now on Rooted, we're joined by filmmakers Dan Algrant and Don Wright, co-creators of the powerful documentary Cathedrals. Nearly 50 years after their first film together, they reunite to explore race, memory, and the legacy of a Boston housing project through the eyes of those who lived it. So Don and Dan, thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you
for having us.
For having us.
So the original Cathedral film was in 1976. It was about the cathedral housing projects in Boston's South End. What did you two set out to accomplish with that first project?
That's a great question because a lot of what we set out to accomplish, we had to figure out together. And that meant that we had to meet and spend a lot of time discussing that. And so that became part of the process. And a lot of that was done while also we were waiting for the camera to arrive. You know, we were trying to raise funds. And then, I don't know what it was like for Dawn to have me from this sort of prestigious, in quotes, prep school coming into the neighborhood and saying, I'd like to make a film about the projects with you. What do you think? I don't know what that was like, but it probably was not something that happened every day.
What was it like, Don?
So what that was like, I was already, filming for the Harriet Tubman House at the time, and there was a group of us who were learning, how to film. And then we were approached by the staff about having an intern come, to the community and be involved in what we were doing at the time. And so it was a time when tensions were pretty high in Boston, and in the Cathedral projects was one of those projects where we didn't really face a lot of racial diversity because the project was racially equal
Same.
at the time, so we didn't have that problem like other projects in Boston had. But the idea of some guy coming to be involved in our community, most of the time, that was a no-no, that we wouldn't form to that because we were, taught that people want to come to your community and learn how you live, see how you live, and so, but in this case, because it came from a prep school, because it came through the Harriet Tubman House, I remember the group of guys and myself, we were very welcoming to have someone come who I didn't know what we were going to do, and he didn't know what we were going to do. But it ended up being about this 10-year-old boy, and it just went on from that.
And that 10-year-old boy was Kevin Dames.
Correct.
Yes.
Who had suffered a burn injury due to some faulty heating pipes in his housing unit. And so Kevin, obviously he's not...
Illegal heating pipes.
Illegal
Right,
heating
yeah,
pipes,
right.
not faulty,
Right,
but
yeah,
illegal. And so Kevin is a central figure to the first and second iterations of the film. And Dan, you had somewhat of a journey trying to get back in touch with him. Tell us about that.
Well, it was these are hard times, and the times we live in, I feel, and they've been gradually becoming more difficult. And about 5 years ago, I found this film in my garage, and on a tape that was probably not functioning anymore, and it was during the COVID, and it was a time when I also was watching the Floyd murder trial on television, and I thought, wow, this film has been sitting here. This country is not getting much better, And I took a look at I had the film restored and watched it, and it felt more powerful than it did at the time. And I thought, well, if I could take the risk at 16 years old, I should be able to take the risk at 60 years old to try to find out what's really going on in the country, and in this particular way, with these two guys who I had such a great time with. I mean, it was a very positive experience, and it wasn't always that. Trust comes from time. But in this case, we had like a year together, and then there are 45 years in the middle where we had no contact. And
Why
so,
was that? Why did those years go by and neither of you had been in touch with each other?
well, that's what I wanted to know. I wanted to understand what that's about, and I see it all over the country. I see people sort of getting older and getting sort of isolated into their own sort of pods, I'll say. But also it's race-oriented and it's class-oriented, and people just start to separate. And this country now is at its highest level of separation, and so I felt that I wanted to try to do something about that.
Don, what about you? What was that gap? What explains that gap?
So I would have to say that for me, like I was involved in a lot of community service. So this was just another entity that had come along, and I did this thing with this guy. And in the beginning, there was like 5 of us from the project who had come together, and by the end of the time, there was 2 of us, and by the end of that time, it was just me at the end. And
Me, both of us. There were 2 of us. There was only 2. Sorry, there was just
yeah, at the end, it was Dan and I at the end.
But you were the only one from
right.
the project.
But I was the only one from the project that had stuck with it. And that seems to be somewhat part of my bigger story, is that I like to see things to the end. And this one, I didn't see to the end after I went back to Andover, Phillips Academy, and we showed the film to the students there. And I got a copy, and my world began to go in a different direction. But I had always had this thing in my heart about, I need to let this kid, Kevin, when he was 10 years old, see this recording of himself. And that didn't happen. Life's changes began to happen, and I moved away from Boston. A couple years later, I went to Western Mass, and I never returned back to Boston. And so the copy of the film, have no idea what happened to it. Probably left it at my mother's house in the project, moved on, and that was that.
And Kevin didn't remember being filmed, which is also extraordinary. So it's on both of us that we didn't really show the film to him. And that comes up in the film, in the new film. And it becomes part of our journey together.
So we have a clip of the moment that you do come across Kevin, and here's the conversation that you two have.
10 years. No, I've been 100% for 6 years. I'm sorry. I just became 100%. Hey, what's up there, big guy?
100%.
All right, good.
100% means 100% sober.
Service connected.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
100%
Oh, service.
connected.
I see.
Yeah,
yes,
so
sorry.
I'm retired. I don't.
I get it.
Yeah, that's one thing. I know I did a lot of things, been through a lot.
Yeah.
Hey, but God's got me here.
Yeah.
Without Him, I wouldn't have survived Desert Storm.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have survived my seizures. I wouldn't have survived today. I wouldn't be sitting here, conversing, doing this right now.
The seizures come from just being stressed out, or
They
Time in the
haven't
ass.
found it. Well, it's from head trauma, head
yeah.
military, and stress, and and like you said, like you heard the gentleman about the burns.
Yeah.
It affects a person. It affects me a lot in my life.
I'm sure.
Mentally,
Yeah.
emotionally.
Yeah.
Because it scarred me for life.
I understand.
It scarred me. No, you don't understand.
Well, you know what? I totally
no,
don't.
you don't understand. So,
Fair enough.
not to be funny, but I dislike when a person says they understand,
here-
and it's like.
So, Dan, I was so curious when I saw that clip what that moment was like for you when Kevin very straightforward was like, "No, you don't understand." And then of course you had that moment where you were showing him why you could empathize. But what did that moment teach you about the relationship between filmmaker and subject?
It taught me that you have to listen, and that it's and also that, and the film becomes partly to say this, that when you have a conversation with someone, you get to, and Kevin does, and I do, make a second draft of what you say. People are so afraid right now to talk to each other at all. They're afraid to reveal their own feelings because they think, A, they don't want to have an argument, they don't want to have, or they just know already what they're feeling. But the truth is, when you ask someone a question, and you have to be prepared to hear the answer, but then, and it's said in the film, you should be able to have the ability to say it again and have learned why you might have hurt that person or misunderstood them or not been clear. And that's the way people can make progress, learning about what another person is like. And, you know, we're in a country where, and I won't go too much into the grand scheme of politics, but right now you have two sides of Congress that don't seem to talk to each other at all, ever. And if we can't do it alone together, here, you and I, the three of us, then we're in big trouble. And that's what I learned from that moment.
I mean, it made me think a lot because even as a journalist, you tell stories about people. You don't always keep in touch with them for the rest of your life. There are even I've had the privilege of being able to travel and take pictures of people who may never see these photos of them that I've taken, right? And I think you really have to wrestle with that and put yourself in the shoes of the subject and think about how they might be feeling. And Don, did that come up for you as you were reconnecting with Kevin?
Yeah. So I, after I showed the film at Andover, it was my feeling that I needed to figure out, how to bring this back to my community, and I got lost in the drama of busing. My young sister, for the first time, was on that bus, 9th grade, leaving and from the front of the Cathedral Church, got on that bus. The bus came back a few hours later, all bombed out, and she never finished high school because of that. And so I always tried to be this young guy who was all about diversity and trying to bring diversity, to my community, bring it to myself, and to learn why, that I was not able to go to other communities and learn about their community, and Boston became a place where somehow I learned that I want to be a steward of that. I wanted to break this barrier, and I grew up in a neighborhood where we were white, black, Spanish, and we didn't have that problem, and so after the film was made, it was really in my heart to make sure that it happened. And I must say now, though, 40, 50 years later, it is more powerful now, like it really, really worked, that Dan finds the film, he comes back, and he finds me, and we start that journey again, because the world has changed. My neighborhood has changed.
Yeah, the South End does not look like it once did, like it did in 1976.
Yeah, it does not, and I'm really proud of that. This idea that I, as a black man, I stand, on the shoulders of those who were before me, and when I was a kid, I couldn't ride through South Boston to go to the ocean to go fishing. It just couldn't happen. And when I did try it, it was not good results, at the time. But I didn't give up on that, though. So I made it, and I went to other communities where I was somewhat more welcomed. But South Boston just wasn't that place. And I was on D Street last week in South Boston saying to myself, when people say to me, well, it really hasn't changed, well, If you know what I know,
stand there and not have
if you can
somebody
stand
come
in South
jump
Boston
you.
today, it's changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I am curious from your point of view, Don, when we think about this whole idea of story ownership, right? Obviously, Dan is a white man telling a story about a black community. Do you think that more often than not, when it's that dynamic and black people are the subject, does it happen more often that they don't get that autonomy in their stories, say when it's a white filmmaker, or is this kind of a larger issue when it comes to documentary filmmaking?
Yeah, it's a larger issue when it comes to documentary. You know, this particular film documentary, it crosses all the lines. It shows, that there is a chance that things, have and can get better. We see that now, but at the time, there was, people in the community that wouldn't accept a white guy coming in because, of what I say is that he's coming to exploit me and take from me, and I was told that in the beginning, Thank God I didn't believe it.
And the film about the film, this new film, is about that in some way, and it was and it was a learning experience for all of us. It was a journey. It's been a really special journey for me these last few years. But in the middle of the film, it was very conscious of Don taking over the narration. I mean, it was like this. I felt that we both felt that the film should change the way the first film was. That it's a second draft of Cathedral.
And there's even a bit of redemption because you come to the point with reckoning with compensating Kevin for his contribution to the film.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. And, that's an extremely important idea. We actually all own the film together. In this day and age, owning a film is different than it used to be, but it is...
Just ask Ryan Coogler.
It's a very important idea of being able to, but it shouldn't stop us from trying to understand what another person is like. And that's, the ownership of a story is important, but it's also important to understand, I feel, like we can talk together. I came back and we went through a lot separately for 40 years, and yet it was almost like for the last 2 years we've been, if you don't mind my saying so, very close since then. And it's taking the risk, and both of us have taken risks here, to realize that you can learn from another person's story, even if you don't share all their history, and it's worth doing. It's worth doing.
So, Don, I don't know if there's going to be a third Cathedrals film made, but what do you hope the impact of this second film will be?
Yeah, so the impact is that it crosses all the barriers. This thing will reach you and make you think about your time and era and place as a young person, and if you, have any, prejudice within your heart, this film will let you know that eventually those things will go away. That, you find out, just because I don't live in Newton and I live in the south end of Boston, people are still the same. I found out that people in South Boston, they were the same as me. I found out that people in Charlestown, the only difference was they were different color. We were all poor and living in a project. So that barrier through film, through community, can be broken just by conversation.
Right.
Well, Don and Dan, I want to thank both of you for having this conversation here with me and with our Rooted audience. And I'm excited to see where things go for you. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you
much
for having me.
us. Yeah.
We're proud to partner with Bunker Hill Community College, powering Boston's future workforce through access, equity, and innovation in higher education. Thank you for supporting Rooted and the future of public media. Click the link in the description or visit bhcc.edu to learn more.